This is Brad Montgomery. Welcome to the Successful, Interesting, and Awesome podcast, where I interview people who are, wait for it, successful, interesting, and awesome. Or at least one of those three. Hey everybody, I can't wait for you to understand and meet Shawn Preston. So many things are interesting about this guy. He's one of the top magicians in Colorado, which makes him one of the top magicians in the country. But one of the many things I found so interesting about this interview is that understanding that his path from a real life, meaning a traditional job with benefits and, a steady paycheck, to that job, that moment where you say, all right, no, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to do this thing that gives me such joy and brings me such passion. And I'm going to take that leap. And I've done that. I've taken that leap, and it's not easy. And it's really, I just loved hearing Shawn's version of this. And, I think you're going to love it too. The world is filled with people like Shawn Preston, and that he's super accomplished. And his peers and the people who are important in his industry know who he is. Booking agents, other magicians, clients. But, the rest of us don't. He's one of those people that's quietly awesome, that's quietly successful, and just killing it. But at the same time, we don't know about him, and I think that makes him kind of a hidden gem. So I love this interview with this guy with such an interesting art form, something that I have passion for, magic and sleight of hand. And he's just one of the world's nicest guys. I can't wait for you to meet Shawn Preston. Hey everybody, it's Brad Montgomery. Welcome. It's good to see you. Happy almost Thanksgiving. Well, the name of the show is Successful, Interesting, and Awesome. And to be honest, it's been kind of an excuse for me to interview some of my more successful, coolest, most awesome friends to say, like, what is it behind you? How do you get to be that way? And lucky us, we have a really cool guest. This guy is a really fancy, really respected magician. And that's a big deal. If you type magician into Google, it will blow up and smoke will come out of your laptop. So the real question is, like, how do you find magicians who are really good, who are actually out there performing, who are tearing up audiences day after day? And that is our next guest. It's Shawn Preston. Please say hello to my friend, rockstar magician. This is Shawn Preston.
Hello.
And the crowd goes crazy.
Yeah.
All right, dude. You're a magician? Seriously? Tons of little kids do magic, but not many people transition to a full-time professional making a living for magic. How'd you get started doing that?
It's a little bit of a story. I was interested in magic when I was really little. 5, 6 years old. My dad always had a top dresser drawer filled with little magic tricks that he'd collected over the years. My dad always loved magic. He wasn't a magician by any means, but he had picked up little pocket tricks here and there, and he knew some card tricks and, tricks with paper napkins and things like that. And so at an early age, my dad was showing me little magic tricks that I was just fascinated by. I was fascinated by the wonder of magic, but also I was fascinated by the mechanics of how something could work, So my dad would show me a little magic, and then I was real young, maybe 7 or 8 years old. My dad bought a magic set at a garage sale, and but the magic set didn't have any instructions, and so my dad and I spent just hours and hours looking at these props, trying to figure out what they did. And so that's where the fascination with the mechanics came about. And then once I learned what the mechanics was, then I could achieve this really amazing piece of magic. I was thrilled. So by the time I was 10 years old, I was setting up all these magic tricks on the TV trays in the basement, and was doing magic shows for my mom's in-home daycare that she ran. And then, my dad would take me out to the local magic store. I'd save up my allowance for a couple months, and we'd make a trip over to the local magic shop, and he'd buy a trick, and I'd spend my allowance on a trick. And And so that was always a cool adventure. When I was a teenager, one of my best friends lived close to a mall. And so, as teenagers are prone to do, we'd go hang out at the mall, and a magic shop opened at the mall. And so I would spend my whole time at the magic shop while my friend would just leave and go play video games or something. And I would just hang out at the magic shop.
And your friend
By the
thought,
time,
my friend is
what's
such a
that?
loser. Your friend thought you were such a loser. All he does is magic
Yeah, he's
shop.
like, okay, I'm so bored with this. I'm going to go down to the arcade.
Yeah, there's asteroids,
And
brother. Why would you care about this?
right, yeah, and I continued to discover all these just amazing things, and then I think I was 17 years old. I was working at a local restaurant, and a magic shop opened up right next door. And so this was my summertime job. And so I was working on the day shift at this restaurant. And so I would take my first break right when the magic shop opened next door. And I would go over there and spend my lunch break at the magic shop. And then when I got off at 5 o'clock, I would go over to the magic shop, and I'd stay there until 9 o'clock at night. And I would do that the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. And after a couple months of this, they finally offered me a job. And so I quit my job at the restaurant, started working at the magic shop, and just I never looked back. I just decided that's what I wanted to do. And so I made that my goal and continued down that path.
So are we talking about Casa Bonita? You worked at Casa Bonita?
I did. I worked at Casa Bonita.
Wait, and you had a
And
real job. You were like dressing tables, or what were you doing?
yeah, I did all of that. I worked in the kitchen. I worked in the dish room. I was a waiter. I did all sorts of different roles. I was even the sopapilla guy. I sat in the sopapillas making sopapillas. But yeah, as soon as I found out, and I should mention that Casa Bonita had magicians working there.
Yeah.
And so on Saturdays, which is the nights, that I would have to work a Saturday night, that was the night the magicians worked too. And so I would time all my breaks to happen at the same time as the magicians, so that I could go sit down and just be around them. I'd like pick their brains and ask them about little magic tricks that I'd seen at
Right.
the shops and stuff like that growing up, and ask them to show me a card trick. And so over the course of I don't know, probably a year's time of doing that every Saturday, I got to know those magicians pretty well. And a couple of those magicians are still my friends, which is, 35 years later, they're still friends of mine, which is exciting. So
Which makes it, there's so many things in there. I'm going to slow you down because I want to go back in time and ask you some stuff.
yeah,
Do you remember the first trick what's the first trick you remember seeing? So you said your dad had small tricks.
yeah. So there was two tricks that continually baffled me, that my dad would show me over and over and over, and I was just baffled. One was this little wooden box, real slim, kind of rectangular box with a drawer.
Hmm.
And he'd slide the drawer out, he'd put a quarter in, close the drawer, snap his fingers, he'd open it up, and the quarter was gone. And then he'd close the drawer, snap his fingers, open it up, and the quarter was back.
Right.
And this had me baffled for just months and months and months. And I just thought it was the coolest,
Yeah.
greatest trick ever. The
How,
other one
how
that my
old were you
dad,
then?
yeah, I think I mean, I had to have been six,
Mm.
maybe
Yeah. So
five or
that
6 years
coin
old.
went, as far as you knew, it went to like Never Never Land. That was like a
Yeah,
very,
yeah. And truthfully, sometimes my dad would mix it up. He'd make the coin disappear, and then he'd reach up and pull a coin out from behind my ear.
ooh, that
And
sneaky dad.
yeah, he and like I said, eventually he did tell me how it worked, and I was equally fascinated by the mechanics of it. And then eventually my dad gave me that little trick, and it became one of my just prized possessions.
Yeah.
Um, Fast forward 25 years later, I eventually lost it somewhere along the way, but I was traveling somewhere, and I came across one of those, and I bought it, and I gave it to my dad for Father's Day a few years ago,
Oh,
just because that trick was just so influential in
yeah.
my life. Um, so that was probably the main one. The other one, my dad, he used to do a thing with a napkin or like a tissue. He would take a piece of tissue and he'd tear it up, stuff it in his hand, snap his fingers, and when he took it back out, it was completely restored.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how that could possibly work. So,
It's funny when you talk to magicians, you ask them that question. What's the earliest question or magic trick you remember? We all have an answer, but I
yeah,
don't think Muggles. I don't think they
yeah,
remember.
that's probably true. Like what was the very first trick you ever saw? If they're not a magician, they probably don't really
Yeah.
remember.
For
Yeah.
me, I remember my dad's mom and dad's friend, Mr. Merrill, came over, and he had these little pieces of sponge that were in the shape of a bunny, and they were yellow,
Uh, yeah.
right? You know that. And he'd put them in my hand, and magic would happen. They would multiply and change. And at the end, he put a ring. The bunnies were gone, and his wedding ring was in his hand. And
Oh,
my head
good.
exploded. I still have that feeling.
Yeah.
And for years, I would walk in and buy this trick, which used to be available for $1 in every magic store in the world.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, but how do you turn it into a ring?
Yeah.
Because what that this guy added a sleight of hand expertise
Yeah.
outside of the realm of that trick. But
Yeah.
oh man, I remember that. That was crazy. And
Well, and I can even remember the very first trick that I ever saw in a magic shop. I remember going into a magic shop, and I could tell you the very first trick that I saw that made me want to continue going back to the magic shop and saving my money. I can also tell you the very first magic trick I ever bought
well,
because some of those were just so important to my life. Uh, so I definitely a lot of those still stick out in my memory.
what was the first trick at a magic store, and what was the first trick you bought?
So when I mentioned that my buddy lived by a mall, and we'd go over and he'd go to the arcade, and I'd go hang out at the magic shop. And I remember the very first time I walked into that shop, the guy behind the counter showed me a nickel, and he set a nickel down in my hand, and he had a little green disc, and he laid that disc on top of the nickel. He snapped his fingers, lifted up the disc, and the nickel had shrunk
Yeah.
to this teeny tiny little nickel. And it it was unlike anything I had ever seen in my entire life, and my mind exploded. And I promptly popped down my $5 and bought that trick. And then when my friend came back from the arcade, I did it for him, and then his brain exploded.
Right, right.
Um, but then he was like, "Okay, that's it," and then moved on. So,
Well, I think that magic trick would go by today's standards because that would work on Instagram, right? That is a
yeah,
freaking visual boom trick.
it is
That's a mind
absolutely.
that's a mind blowing trick. Ickle
Yeah,
pickle or something like that, or ickle nickel
ickle,
or
ickle, pickle, nickel. Yeah, yep.
got it.
And it was called Ickle Pickle because the company that created it, their name of their company was called Ickle Pickle.
Got it. Sorry, there's like five things happening around here. Yeah, we're supposed to be able to multitask, but I cannot possibly do it. Uh,
Where is my freaking phone?
all right. So one of the things that strikes me about everybody I interview, because I tend to interview people who are really good at their job, have this thing that is baffling, I think, to most people, and it's the thing you just described, which is intense passion at such an early age. You're 6 and you're like hyper focused. Then your friends wanting to play video games and you're like, no, I'm hyper focused. Then you're at a job and you're arranging your breaks and your before and after the job thing because you're hyper focused. Did 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 you ever think that was unusual?
Um, not really. I mean, my parents always encouraged. Um, they encouraged us to my brothers and I to be involved in many things, but they really encouraged us to be passionate about things. And at an early age, I was passionate about magic, and I was also very passionate about art. And so I drew, I painted, I sculpted, I did all those sorts of things. Primarily drawing and painting; those were. And my parents really encouraged that. They didn't force me to get into sports. They didn't force me to do other things. They would foster that those interests and those passions. And so my parents were very much supportive of me doing magic and supportive of me doing art. And so for my brothers who were both into sports, I was just never really that much into sports. And so my parents would put my brother into soccer, but they'd put me into art classes. And,
We're sending Shawn to art camp.
yeah, it's true. And then, magic was kind of, to my parents, while they appreciated it and supported me doing it, they didn't ever see it as a viable vocation. So I worked at a magic shop, and I continued to work there through the last, I think, year and a half of high school, and then through the first year of college. I actually dropped out of college because I wanted to do magic. And my parents, I said, why am I doing this? I was going to art school, and I just decided I didn't really want to go to art school anymore. I didn't want to go into the art field. I wanted to be a performer. And when my parents found out that I had dropped out, they came down on me pretty hard and said, you need to go back to school. You need to get an education. If you decide you want to do magic in the future, go for it, but you need to get an education. And so I went back. I re-enrolled, went back into college, kind of put magic on the back burner for a couple of years so that I could finish up my degree in graphic design. So
did you drop off in the middle of the semester and take some Fs, or did you?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I ended up doing about a year in school, and I was because I was going to a art school. I was going to the Art Institute. It was a 2-year program, and so after the first year, I basically just said, I don't want to do this. I was kind of in the transition between. I was really at about the halfway point, and just decided I didn't want to do it. So when I did eventually go back, I actually switched schools and then kind of started my degree all over again because I switched art schools. So.
All right, so now you got a newly minted art degree. Were you a full-time magician when you graduated?
No, I really put magic on the back burner. I mean, I continued to read magic books. I continued to read, magazines, and I was still hang out with friends that were magicians and whatnot, but I didn't really do much with that. I definitely wasn't performing. I just really tried to focus on having a job, getting a real job doing graphic design. Mostly because that's what my parents told me I needed to do.
Sure.
They always said, you can fall back on magic, man. They were kind of old school. It was
Right.
like, magic's not a real viable vocation. You need to have a real job. And so that's what I did, because that's what mom and dad said to do. And so I went into the corporate world and worked for ad agencies and design firms, and just did magic kind of just as my hobby on the side. I never really stopped. I just did it as a hobby then.
How long were you working in the corporate world as an artist?
Oh boy, I think I worked probably 12 years, 12 or so years, I think, in the corporate world, maybe 13.
That's longer than I thought.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I'd have to go back and
But that kind of raises
look at the
stakes.
calendar. But it was quite a while, actually, and somewhere along the way, I did pick up magic and start performing more. I started working at a restaurant and doing magic tableside at a restaurant. I was working at I worked at like an Old Chicago's. I worked at a Chili's, and eventually landed at Dave and Buster's. I worked at Dave and Buster's for about 5 years doing tableside magic there. But I wasn't really booking shows. That was really my only performance outlet, was working at the restaurant.
Right.
And so I worked in the corporate world up until 2005, and that's when I left my job and decided I wanted to start moving in the direction of becoming a full-time
Right.
performer.
Well, let's talk about that conversation. So that puts you, in my mind, that's 30-ish, 31, 32 years old.
Yeah, I was right around there.
So were you married
Um, you mean at the time when
when you said I'm going to be a magician full time?
yes, I was. So I left my corporate job 2005, and to be honest, I knew I wanted to do magic, but I was married, and I knew we wanted to have a family, and so I kind of I was very torn. So I spent a couple years kind of deciding what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to open up my own design firm. I didn't know if I wanted to just quit everything and do magic. And at one point, I think it was in 2007, my wife and I kind of had a heart to heart conversation, and because I just wasn't happy,
Right.
and she said, "What is it that you want?" And I said, "I want to do magic. I want to perform. I don't want to sit behind a desk anymore." And she said, "Then do it. What's holding you back?" And I said, "Well, I just always felt like this is what I needed to do."
Yeah.
And she said, I feel like I need to bring home a paycheck. This is what you're supposed to do." And she said, "No, you do what you want to do and everything will work out." And so with her blessing, I slowly started letting my graphic design business kind of fizzle out while I slowly built up the magic business. So I did this kind of flip flop, and it was very methodical. I mean, I just took on fewer and fewer clients in the design world and started going out and doing more and more shows, and so that by the middle of 2008, I well, actually, it wasn't even the middle. At the beginning of 2008, I fully quit all my design work and ended everything with all my clients and jumped in full time. So,
I was just thinking about
and
2008. We know that year is not a great year for luxuries, right?
yeah, yeah, it wasn't a great timing with the big economic crash of 2009. That was, if only I could have seen a crystal ball. Actually, I got very lucky because in 2009, I was performing at a restaurant and I met a local news reporter, and she saw me and she said, "I love what you do. What is your real job?" And I said, "Well, this is my real job." And she said, "You mean you perform magic for a living?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to." And she said, "Even in this economy?" And I said, "I'm trying to."
Yeah.
I said, "I try to look at it as not a bad economy, just a different economy." And so she took my card, called me a couple days later, and said she wanted to do a story on me. And and she did. And I ended up on the local news. And by the end of 2009, I was super busy because they saw my story on the news and said, I want to hire this guy. We just laid off a ton of people. We have bad morale going on in our company. We need to bring somebody in to boost the morale, and they would bring me in. So while other solo and entrepreneurial
Right.
entertainers were struggling, I was very fortunate. I was doing really good. So it everything kind of worked out in my
So
favor.
that news story couldn't have come at a better time.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
Well, so what was the conversation like with your mom and dad? So they see you as a new married. You're talking about having a family, and Mom and Dad, I quit my art job.
Yeah, when I finally kind of told them that that's what I was going to do, they said, then we support you and will support you in any way that we can. We know that that's been your passion since you were little, and you followed down the path that we asked you to do, and you did that, and now by all means go out and do what you want to do.
Well
And
done,
my
Mom and
parents were very
Dad.
gracious. They truly supported, during that transition period of trying to build up clientele and not making a whole lot of money. That was actually the same year that my son was born. So I was a stay-at-home dad trying to build up a performing business, and my
Right.
parents were very very helpful with that. So um,
Well, one of the many things I think is hilarious is you left a difficult job to start a difficult job. I mean, like typically for parents who are worried about the financial success of their kids, they're not hoping they become artists. They want them to be doctors or financial guys or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're an artist. You're like, I'm going to quit this secure world as an artist. So
Yeah. I
you're
think they ultimately just saw that I was just happier performing, and pursuing this entertainment world of magic. And I feel like while they knew that I liked art, I was never ultra passionate about it. And especially as I got older, that passion for art kind of waned while the passion for magic grew. And my parents recognized that, and my wife recognized that too. So
well done you for having a good family, good support system.
yeah,
Well, also you made it. So, you know, you and I are in parallel businesses. I'm a magician, but I make my living as a speaker. And
right.
it's the same thing, nothing's assured. You don't know what you're going to make next month or next year or next October or whatever.
That's true.
Right. But it takes a certain personality type. And I think my guess is that, like me, I have many people who would like to be a full time professional speaker call me and write me and say, how do you do that? I'm guessing you get that call a lot. Hey, I want to be full time, Sean. How do you do it?
Yeah, I've had a handful of different performers in town reach out to me and ask for, what was the secret to your success? What did you do? What were your steps? And I tried to help. I tried to tell them the path that I went down. Like I said, for me, it was pretty methodical. You know, I let the design. I didn't just quit my design job. I just kind of let it fizzle out. I slowly started taking fewer and fewer clients, so that I could take on more clients performing magic. Um, but even the jobs that I was taking as a designer were jobs that were short term jobs. So
Right.
I might do a job that was only 3 months, and as opposed to a long term contract. So uh, you know I've mentioned that, and I think the interesting thing is that for a lot of people, they're in totally different circumstances. And so, one friend reached out to me and said was thinking about going full time, but he had just been laid off of his job, and so he wasn't working at all.
Right. Right.
So, you know, I could say to him, well, here's what I did, but it's a little different for you because you're not working at all. I
Right.
was working. I was still able to do graphic design jobs on the side and to try to have some money coming in.
Right.
So, I think for each person that I've tried to help out, their circumstances are a little bit different, but for the most part, I've been able to give them some of the things that I did.
Well, here
And
comes the deep question of the day. Here's your first landmine. Look out.
oh man, you got me nervous now.
What do you do with people who say, Sean, I want to do this, and they can't? Meaning, they might be delightful people. They might have 160 IQ. They just don't have, there's something in your experience that flags them as like, you're going to be great at whatever you do, but don't pick magic because that's not going to happen. What do you
Well,
tell
that's
those
an
people?
interesting question. I don't think that I've ever had that, to be honest.
No
And if I
way.
if I did, I don't.
Because they
I,
see it, they see
I
how
don't know.
easy you make it look, and they're like, how hard could it be?
Yeah, I mean, I have had a couple of situations where I had somebody that wanted me to teach them sleight of hand, and through a couple of lessons, they were not, they didn't have the physical dexterity to be able to do sleight of hand.
Yeah.
So I basically told them as much in a nice way and said, your hands don't work the way that you need them to work in order to do sleight of hand. But thankfully, there's a lot of different things that you can still do in magic without relying on sleight of hand, because magic is not just about sleight of hand. So, um, and truthfully, I can't think of a situation where I've had somebody that was kind of, as you said, flagged that they wanted to be a magician, and I looked at them and said, that's not going to happen. I mean, I've always tried to,
Well,
regardless of my personal thoughts about it, I've tried to encourage them and say,
right.
you know,
Now I feel
um,
like now the world knows I'm a shallow guy, but it has happened
but
where I've had people like the perform. There's a performer vibe, and you can meet some people and go like, oh, if you want to
yeah,
be on stage, you could learn
yeah,
that because you have that. There's something about your personality, and some people are just missing that.
yeah.
They're
Well,
excellent
and
people. They
I
just
have
don't
done
have that.
that. There have been people that I've run into that I've quote unquote mentored, and you know they're anxious to get up on stage, and I've flat out told them, you're not ready to be on stage. You've got a lot of work to do before you start going out doing shows and getting on stage and doing magic in front of people. And I'm pretty adamant about that sort of thing because my teacher was adamant about that. That if you're going to go out and perform, you need to represent magic in a great way. And if you're not ready to do that, then you have no business booking shows. And so I have had a couple of situations where I've done that. I've tried to get people to cool your jets, practice your routines, practice your presentations, and then go out. Don't jump the gun.
I've really struggled, Sean, because there have been people who say like, "It's okay, Brad. I've got 3 months savings in the bank, so I got 3 months to get this working." And I know 30 months is not enough for you. I mean, one, because this is a very hard job to build up. You don't just start and it goes great.
Right.
Plus, some people just don't have it, and I feel like, are you making a mistake? Do we have an ethical duty to say, you are a lovely person. This is a brutally hard job. I don't think you know how hard it is. And it could be that your personality is not built for solopreneur, for standing on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I guess I haven't. I can't think of a time where I've been had to be brutally honest with somebody like that. I mean, I've always tried to be very encouraging and say, here,
Next
you
time it happens
you
to me, I'm going to have them call you. That's it.
yeah, could you?
Well,
Yeah,
what I
tough
finally kind of
question.
landed on is I don't tell them, you know what, I just don't think you have it. Like whatever the X factor is, I don't think you have it. I don't say that, but I do. I don't think people understand how hard it is to do this job. They're either focused on the performance side. So for a magician, learning the tricks, being able to perform the tricks, being able to put them together to make a show. Um, but they forget there's a business side too, which means you got to have someone pay you to do that. And it does.
Yeah,
Just saying you're a magician doesn't make your phone ring.
yeah, exactly. And just because you bought a couple of tricks doesn't make you a magician either. So, yeah, like I said, there have been people that I have mentored, and they're anxious to jump out and start performing, and I mean, I can't stop them from performing, but I have told them you're not ready, and you're not. You need to do this, and this before you get out there and start presenting magic. And I try to do it in a nice way, but I mean also firm at the same time of like, you're going to be representing magic, which is representing all of the magicians
Right.
in town and around the country and around the world. I mean, you need to be ready, and you're not ready. So I have had that conversation, but admittedly only a couple of times.
Let's talk about that. When you got your first job was a restaurant gig,
Yeah.
right? Were you ready?
You know what? That's funny because I thought I was. I really did. I worked at a magic shop. I worked behind a counter. I did sleight of hand tricks, and I sold tricks. I did that for a couple of years. I had actually even done a couple of shows that I had managed to grab. And really, truthfully, even then, I don't think I was ready to do those. But when I did get my restaurant job, I'll be honest. I thought I was, I thought I was ready, and I thought I was pretty much hot stuff until I went up to my first couple of tables and suddenly went, oh, I know how to do this trick, but I don't know how to approach a table. I don't know how to approach people. I don't know
Right.
how to talk to people. I didn't know any of that stuff, and that was that
Yeah.
first night at the restaurant, man. That was a super eye opener.
Yeah. I've
Plus,
literally,
a lot of the material that I thought would work didn't work, and I didn't think about carrying where was I going to carry things, how was I going to reset things. Suddenly, the reality of performing in front of people in a restaurant type of situation, it wasn't the perfect situation where I'm sitting behind a counter at a magic shop and all my props are sitting right there. I had to carry my props on my person. I had to figure out pocket management and how to approach people, how to lead people, all of that.
I just,
I
I love that phrase, pocket management. Any non-magician just there went like, how weird are these people?
yeah, they're
Pocket
like
management.
pocket
It's true
management.
though.
What
Like
is
if
that?
you're Sean and you're working in a restaurant, you need to have mini magic tricks available and in
Right,
your pockets, but you have limited pockets. And
right.
that's something magicians think about.
Yeah, that
Pocket
is
management,
absolutely
that
that
phrase.
is like that is high on the list of what magicians think about when it comes time to be working a job. Is where are all those tricks going to go, and am I going to remember that that's where I put them? So you develop a
Yeah.
system of my deck of cards goes in this pocket, my coins go in this pocket, and from here on out forever they are going to go into those
Right, right,
pockets.
right. I remember
So that
years
you don't
ago.
walk up to a table and start going, "Where's all my stuff? I don't know where it is." Yeah,
I remember years ago in a magic magazine, somebody, maybe many people, but they would sell basically a big vest. It was black and it was meant to go
yeah,
under your jacket. And the idea would be this vest could be filled with millions of pockets. But
yeah.
it was such a goofy idea because it's impossible to open your jacket to access the vest without the audience thinking, what kind of weirdo are you?
Right,
That is,
exactly.
why do you have, what? What is that weird thing?
Well, not to mention, you also. I remember my first restaurant job, my first night at the restaurant. I think I had every single trick that I owned at that time, and nobody told me that. Look, you really only need 3 or 4 or 5 tricks because you're going to do those and then you're going to go to a whole nother group of people that have never seen any of
Right,
those tricks. You can do those same 3, 4, or
right.
5 tricks again, or you can do 2 tricks and you could just do those same 2 tricks all night long. So I'm sure I walked up to the
Yeah.
table and my pockets are bulging with props and you know scarves falling out of my pockets and little sponge bunnies all over the place. So
Uh, the good old days. Well, the
yeah,
way I see it now is, you talked about you were a very skilled magician because you'd done so much magic before that first gig. But talking to people was a thing, relating to people, approaching people,
absolutely.
starting up,
Yeah,
and I think we know now as because we're older, that's the hard part.
right.
Like, I mean, imagine really you can do pretty. I could give you a poor to a mediocre to very poor magic trick, and you'd be fine because you could do all the connection part.
Right.
Being a good magician is not the hard part. I think,
Right.
anyway.
I agree. I think, yeah, like I said, the hardest part of that first night was suddenly I had to walk up to a table and cold introduce myself, not just once, not just twice, but over and over and over for 2 hours. And
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that. I mean, oddly enough, I was always very much an introvert, and nobody had ever really taught me how to do that. So I had all this great sleight of hand, pretty skilled, but had my people skills were not that
Well,
great,
I
especially on a cold approach.
you said oddly enough. I suspect people listening to this who are not in the magic world are like, of course, magic geeks are introverted. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yes. Yeah.
Because like there's a do you think let me ask you, do you think there's a personality style that are attracted to magic? It's like I think if you say to a random group of people gathered around in their workroom or their break room at a job and say describe a magician, I think they're all going to describe a similar person. Do you what do
I
you
think that's true. I think that's true. I think that magic appeals to virtually everybody in some fashion, and I think particularly males, but women as well. But I think they're immediately fascinated by this thing that comes off initially as a puzzle. But for most of them, once they see that they move on with their life. But there's a definitely certain type of person that continues with the magic and continues looking for more of these puzzles and more of these secrets, and spends the time necessary to learn the secrets to them and the moves, right. and then pursues it for 44 years of their life.
All right, let's play a game, Mr. Preston. The game goes like this. I'm going to name something that I think a typical magician would be interested in. And then you're going to say, like, yeah, I agree. And then it's your turn to name something. So I'm going to start. Very common for magicians to be interested in Rubik's Cubes. True or false?
Currently true. Yeah.
Have you got one? What else are magicians interested in?
Well, magicians are often very interested in things to carry all their props. that's bags and cases and boxes and all these things. I think there's actually web pages devoted to hey, look what I found at Home Depot, this cool box to carry all my tricks in.
that is what, when I'm talking to my non-magical friends, that is one of my favorite topics, is describing magicians at a big magic conference and what they carry.
Yeah.
Because for a while, I haven't seen it as much recently, Shawn, but for a while they were making women's purses that looked a little bit like a briefcase, a little bit like a lunchbox. They didn't have flowers on them. They might have been metal. And so suddenly there's 1,000 magicians wandering around a Las Vegas casino at a magic conference carrying a purse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember those?
Absolutely. A purse or a briefcase or, some sort of brief bag or, little makeup case. I've seen that. Makeup cases.
Fanny pack.
Yeah. Fanny packs. Yeah.
Oh, I got to say, just right now for the world, I miss fanny packs. Oh, the storage. Perfect for magicians.
I know. The convenience, right?
Perfect.
The storage and the convenience.
Yeah. I don't mind saying I really wish they would come back in style, because those things are so handy.
I think they are. My wife recently got one, and when we went to Orlando for a week and went all the Disney parks, and she carried that little fanny pack with her.
Are you sure they're back in style?
So,
well, also I've seen people wear their fanny packs like a bandolier across their front, and I'm thinking, dude, it's still a fanny pack.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter where you wear it.
Just because you wear it on your across your chest doesn't mean it's not a fanny pack.
Yeah, the storage. All right, here's my experience with magicians. I find inordinate amount of magicians, anecdotally, who are drummers. Have you ever noticed that?
That's not one that I've noticed, but now I'm going to notice. I'm going to check. I'm going to look into this.
I just feel like Go ahead.
Along those same lines, I have found that a lot of magicians are often very interested in the martial arts.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Yeah, I could right now name off 4 or so magicians that I know of right at the top of my head that are involved in the martial arts.
How about also physical skill toys like yo-yos, beglari, juggling type props?
Yeah. That one seems to me not as much, but definitely. I think most magicians would just grab a pack of cards as opposed to a yo-yo. But I do find that we're getting the
we're both
alert on
our phones are going. Someone's being kidnapped right now. I hope it's not
everything is okay. But yeah, I think oftentimes magicians are, and I think, like you mentioned the Rubik's Cube earlier, I think that's another one of those dexterous type of puzzle type of things that magicians
But
are
but also to the muggles,
interested
it's
in, like a
geeky.
yo-yo or juggling or, fidget spinners and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. But to muggles, they're like, oh, that's so geeky. And we're like,
Yes,
what do you mean?
totally.
What do you mean you haven't played with one of those toys before? I own 4
Yeah,
yo-yos. How can you not
exactly.
be? What do you mean you can't do Rock the Baby? Who can't
Yeah,
do Rock the
exactly.
Baby?
Yep, completely.
All right. Well, I want to talk to you a little. I'm going to switch topics. You and I have talked offline. I think magic has changed, and I think it's for the better. And I think the reason it's changed is because the rate of education is insane right now. So I'm going to tell you a fun story that you probably already know, but why not? I'll tell the, hey, everybody, I'm telling you a story. Story time with Brad. So one of my mentors was named Orville Meyer, and he was my granddad's age. And he lived in a small town in Nebraska, and there wasn't a magic shop there. He didn't have money to get magic books. He just had no access to magic. So he would learn about magicians. He would write on onion skin typewriting paper these laboriously, think no paragraph breaks, these long descriptions of boring tricks that he made up. And theoretically, some of them were good, but they were just whatever he did. And he would mail that to a magician, hoping but not knowing that they would do the same, write up a description of a trick they invented and mail it to him, which to me is such a amazing metaphor of, wow, magic secrets were really hard to get. Where now,
Yeah, yeah,
because of digital printing, it's cheap to produce books. Because of the way video works, it's cheap to produce teaching videos. And because of the way YouTube works, it's pretty easy to find all of those things. So I feel like magic
yeah.
is better because people are learning more. You had to arrange your breaks at a restaurant to see the magician who performed there on Saturday night. You had to work hard. Now you don't have to do that. You just stay up late and watch as many magicians as you want till you fall asleep. But do you think that means the quality of magic has gone up?
Well, I think it. I feel like it has. I think it has. The internet has made the internet's made it difficult for magicians for sure. Um, because I do a trick and somebody could go home, look it up on the internet. It's very possible, in fact, pretty likely, that somebody has revealed the workings of that trick. Um, and so it puts me into a position where I need to make people enjoy seeing that trick, less about the trick and more about the experience. And so I think that has made it harder for magicians, but I think it's made magic better because now magicians, they're going to pay attention to that. They're going to go, how can I make this experience so that the person, they loved every minute about what I just did. They don't want to go home and look up the secret. And certainly there's going to be some that do anyway, because they have to know.
Right.
But my ultimate goal is to give them a sense of wonder and astonishment and just an experience beyond the puzzle factor of the trick that I just did. And so it does, I do put I put more time into what I do because now it's not just about how well I can perform these moves. It's how well can I perform this routine and how can I make them feel so that they just walk away and all they care about is the experience. They don't care to go look it up.
Yeah. Plus Google, I like the way Google works. You have to know what to type in.
That's true.
And so if I see Shawn do a card trick, you can't type in Shawn's card trick in
Right,
Google
right.
and magicians might have some lingo to help them get close, but hopefully, but yeah, I get it. Well, another thing that I think has improved is something you mentioned. Here you are, 2021, you're focused on the experience. I love that phrase. Whereas I remember reading once Houdini would be in some nasty, hot, no air conditioning, smoky, smelly theater, would let people tie him up, and then they would put a screen in front of him, And then people would sit there for over 2 hours. That's what I read, if I have that right, and wait to see if he came out from behind the screen. No one would sit for that right now. Can you imagine a more
Yeah,
boring bit of entertainment? But so
yeah,
that means, then he wasn't interested in the experience. He was interested in the secret, and so too was
yeah.
the audience. Whereas you're saying, like, my audience would never sit for that. I got to be good.
True, true. I think attention spans are much, much shorter. We live in the digital age where the average what is it the average amount of time that you can capture somebody's attention is like 12 seconds or something like that.
Right.
So I think that's forced magicians to be better and be more engaging and make their magic higher impact and better material. And yeah, I mean,
Plus,
and those are all things that I think about too. If
yeah,
I get hired to go out and do it and perform, and I'm doing a gig, I think about, who am I performing for? Because performing for a bunch of high school students at an after prom is going to be different than performing for a bunch of corporate execs.
yeah.
The attention span is going to be different,
Right.
and the presentation is going to be different, and the material is going to be different.
Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, nowadays we have to think about what time of day is it, etc. How does
Yeah,
that change your material?
yeah,
Well, also I think being able to look up other magicians and see other magicians, it's so much easier now. I remember as a very young man being hired to work for the Boys and Girls Club or something like that. So it was a show for little kids in a hotel, the corner of a hotel banquet room. And I did this trick that magicians called the zombie ball. The effect is that a ball floats. And it was just so ill suited for that venue. But I didn't know that because didn't have the ability to look it up on the internet and see how good magicians were performing that trick. I just
yeah. That's true.
read the instructions and said, I've been practicing in front of a mirror. Looks good to me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, the kids busted me. Apparently they didn't believe it floated, and they were right. And two, it was just like that mistake would never happen now because people would know that trick is that's not a good choice.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
never seen a magic show even on video?
Well, I mean, certainly, I think I don't. I will honestly say that I don't spend a lot of time looking up other magicians to see how they. I mean, I have. Don't get me wrong, but I don't spend a lot of time looking at other magicians on video because, truthfully, I don't. I try really hard not to be swayed or influenced by what I've just watched.
Sure.
I don't want to end up having my material be too similar to somebody else's. But I mean, I definitely have,
Right.
and that has been, the dawn of the internet has made that a little bit easier, and you can look up just as a point of reference. How does a magician perform in a trade show setting? So when I was first starting to do trade shows, I would see if I could find, videos of performers that were working trade shows, and so that sort of thing did help. I just haven't done a whole lot of that because I just ultimately didn't want to be influenced too much.
Uh, Now all I do is look up videos of Shawn Preston. That's my secret.
I will say though that as far as magicians and videos, I think AGT and Penn and Teller Fool Us. I mean, we've had a magician win AGT now 4 times, I think. And that's been great. I mean, I think it's fantastic because it lets people. I think it just lends some legitimacy to this art form that we magicians have spent all our time pursuing, and it allows people on a much grander scale. Millions of people watching AGT, seeing the magician win. Now they're exposed to great magic, and
Right.
it over the years it's managed to change the stereotype of the classic magician with a cape and a top hat and pulling a bunny out of the hat. Now it's a guy wearing tennis shoes and a baseball cap backwards and telling a story with a deck of cards and making magic, or it's a guy doing magic to music with smoke and drama and theater. And um, I think it's been amazing to see magic grow
Right.
on television and see how people have accepted it. And so it's made my job easier. So when I go into a venue, I can go into a venue and be me, and there's no preconceived notions of what a magician should look like. I can go in and I can be me, and people are excited about that.
Right. That stigma exists though, right? I just
Oh,
yesterday in the New Yorker magazine, it was a visual joke, so it's hard to describe. But the premise was magicians who show magic a card trick on their first date are losers, and that was like ha ha ha. Like like we're still they don't make fun of like I don't know kickboxers that way.
that's that's true. That's true. Or accountants,
Did you show a
or
magic trick to your wife on the first date?
no, because I really liked her.
That says it all. But that also
uh,
proves that the good
I
magicians.
will fully admit that I tortured my I had a girlfriend for a long, long time. You actually probably remember her from years and years ago. And I'm pretty confident that I tortured her with, here, pick a card. Here, what do you think of this? Because, we started dating right when I was getting into magic. And we dated for like 7 years. And I'm pretty confident that she hated magic by the time we ended up breaking up and moving on with our lives. She was like, if I never see another magic trick in my life, I will be happy.
Yeah,
And so, when it came time and I met my wife, I was like, you know, I don't, I'm going to let her know what I do. I'm going to certainly tell her that I do magic, but I'm not going to show her a magic trick for at least the first couple of dates.
yeah, that's so funny. I would love to interview her right now and say, "Tell me about your first boyfriend," and just see what she'd say.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh my
Uh,
God, 24/7. It was pick a card. Ah,
oh, totally, totally. I know I tortured her with it. So just like I tortured my parents, she just didn't love me like my parents did. So,
yeah, yeah. That parent thing is different. Well, yeah, that just says it all. Did you show a trick to your wife on your first date? No, because I liked her.
yeah, like I wanted to keep her around. I mean, I really liked her.
Well, that just
I,
that's
I
a
will tell you though when I don't know if it was on the first date, but within the first couple of dates, we would talk about what we had done and where we wanted to go with our lives. You start getting into those long, deep conversations,
right,
and I mean, I told her pretty early on, my goal is to be a full time performer,
right.
and I don't think I said it in these words, but ultimately I said, so if you don't want to be with a guy who's a full time entertainer, then I'm not your guy. You know, I mean, at that point in my life, I was just kind of like, this is me,
Right, right,
and this
right.
is who I am, and this is where I'm going, and I'm going to get there somehow, some way. So
Well, I do think magicians, and you're in that category, are fascinating to non-magicians because your passion and your hobby completely overlap with your job. And most people don't do that. They have a job and then they have a hobby. It's not the same. Whereas I know you because I've hung out with you. A good day for you is to go watch a magic show and then talk magic tricks and then maybe show a card trick.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah. I
accountants don't
mean,
do that.
that's true. I mean, I guess it's that real nerdy, geeky thing again, but I literally eat, sleep, drink. I live magic. I mean, if I'm not reading a magic book, I'm, uh, watching a performance, or I'm editing a video, or I'm practicing a card trick, or something. I mean, that's my entire life. So
You're a weirdo.
I am,
So
I am.
does that mean
Yeah,
you're not
right next to
reading?
my bed, I have no joke on the floor next to my bed. I have, I think, 4 piles that are, this tall of books that I'm constantly looking for something. I'm constantly reading on theory or business or a new card trick or
Right.
something. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to be better. So yeah,
Do
from
you
the moment
read?
I wake up to the moment I go to bed.
So that means you're not reading fiction or, I don't know, trashy novels?
Not really. No, I really don't. Um, I used to, but I really don't anymore.
What changed?
Um, I Wow, that's a great question. I think it all kind of changed when I started performing full time, and I felt like I wanted to broaden my repertoire and not only do stand up style magic shows, but close up magic shows and different shows in different environments. And so I felt like, yeah, I really need to broaden my repertoire. And so I was constantly reading, books on tricks and trying to learn new tricks. And then as I got older, I was fascinated by the theory behind it and the psychology behind it. So I started reading books on theory and psychology. Um, and then at the same time, I'm trying to make a living at this. So I'm reading books on business and how to sell myself and how to write emails and how to, promote myself. And then I'm learning, how to build a website and do all that sort of thing. So fiction and all of that, if it's not helping my business, then I just don't read it. I mean, I'll still read, I read articles in the news and things like that, but I haven't read a fiction book in years and years.
Tim Prendergast joined us. Hey, Tim, happy Thanksgiving. He wants to know your favorite
Hey,
books.
Tim.
He wants to know your favorite books, Sean.
Oh man,
Don't go
like
too long. Yeah.
my
Yeah.
favorite magic book.
And I know you could go on for 100. How about the top two?
Um,
I can predict one.
oh really?
Yeah. I bet one of your favorites is The Amateur Magician's Handbook by Henry Heat.
Um, I really do. I like that book a lot. It's not one of my favorites though.
Oh.
I think do the Books of Wonder, do those count as one or two? So it's a
He's
two
going
volume
for a
set for those of
technicality,
you
Tim.
that. The Books of Wonder are great. Strong Magic by Darwin Ortiz, extremely influential in performing, just learning how to make magic powerful. Um, yeah, I mean, gosh, I could go on and on and on with books that I love.
Well, the reason I brought up, just for the muggles listening, the reason I brought up the Amateur Magician's Handbook, for magicians in our era, we all went to the library to check out magic books, and that book was in every library, and it was one of these unusually well-written books, where often magic
Yeah,
books are written poorly. You just have to suffer through it to get the secrets. But that was such a good book, and I know you checked it out 10 times.
yeah, absolutely. I can honestly say one of my favorites was and is Stars of Magic, which was written in what the 50s or something like that. So, but it's filled with just really great magic.
You know that on stage when I'm not doing magic, I'm a motivational speaker, and my topic is encouragement and acknowledgement and social and emotional support. So I'm really curious. You mentioned your teacher, and I think I know who you're talking about. Who, Mr. Preston, who encouraged you? You're in this wacky job that is very hard. Let's be honest, most people quit magic to get a real job because it's much easier. Who encouraged you and made you think you could believe in yourself, whether or not it's a magic teacher or maybe it's an art teacher, maybe it's I don't know.
Well, I think there's been different people at different phases in my life. So, I mean, to directly answer your question, I think the person that encouraged me to do this and make my living doing this was my wife, because I told her this is what I want to do, and she said, "Well, why don't you do it?" And I said, well, yeah, because you always have to worry about money coming in, because I'm no longer going to have a consistent paycheck. And she said, we'll make it work. We'll make it happen. And, and we have. And so with her encouragement and her standing beside me every step of the way, I mean, I honestly don't know that I would have ever been able to do it, so which, by the way, going way back, that is one of the things that I've told some people. They go, hey, Shawn, what do you do if I want to jump into magic full time? I've said, look, I'm in a luxurious position because I have a wife that works. And so when I was still, she still had a paycheck coming in when I was trying to build my business. So that, the first thing you got to do is go get somebody that's going to help pay the bills. But
first step to being a magician, marry somebody with money.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of true. But at other phases of my life, when I first started in magic, absolutely was my teacher, and the person who encouraged me was Steve Aldrich, who was the owner of the magic shop next to Casa Bonita that I worked at. And I'm not sure what it was, but I feel like he saw something in me. He saw that passion and that desire to learn. And he really, truly, truly took me under his wing and would spend time with me, teaching me not just the tricks behind the counter, and not just the moves to do all that stuff, but he would teach me the proper way to present those tricks. And then he started teaching me, here's how you create a foundation that is going to support you as you move forward with, if you choose to pursue this as a career or not. But if you want to go out and perform for people, here's what you need to do. And he gave me all the tools and all the guidance necessary. And he was a full-time entertainer. And so he knew, and he really, truly guided me.
Nice.
I mean, gosh, I can't even, I can't thank him enough. But then the other person that encouraged me a ton when I finally did jump into it and start performing magic full time was my friend Todd Lemansky from Kansas City. I met Todd, oddly enough, I met him on a cruise ship that had like a on-ship convention for magicians, and I already knew about him because he had released some videos, and I had his videos, and I really liked his material. And so I was actually on the cruise ship doing one of his tricks for some guests that were on the ship, and he came up and saw me performing, and I was like, oh my God, you're the guy, you're Todd Lemansky, and we developed a friendship, and now he's one of my dearest friends in the world. But I'll tell you what, when I jumped in full time, he really, really guided me and said, here's what you need to do. Here's how you do it. I mean, he wrote my whole sales package, my sales letter that I would send out to prospective clients. Right. He gave me his contract so that I knew what a contract should look like. He told me, here's how you should structure an act. He allowed me to bounce ideas off of him as far as my show. Even one time I had a show in Wichita, and I flew to Kansas City, and he drove with me to the show so that he could sit in the back and take notes on my show and provide me that feedback. So, I mean, I honestly would not be where I am without the help and the guidance from him. He's amazing.
Go Todd Lemansky. Anyone's listened to this part of my podcast before will know exactly what I'm about to ask. When's the last time you told those people, your wife and Steve Aldrich and Todd Lemansky, how much they mean to you?
I actually recently told Steve. I've actually brought it up a couple of times. I saw Steve in person a couple years ago, and I mentioned it to him then. And then he posted on my Facebook page a few weeks ago, and I posted back and let him know. I'm not sure the last time I told my wife. I'm as soon as I get done with this, I'm going to go up and tell her how much I appreciate her.
Yeah. For this, you're welcome.
and I don't know that I've actually, prior to coming on here, I did tell Todd that he was definitely one of my mentors, but I will, I think I'll follow up with it
Oh,
and thank him. So,
oh, oh. Well, so
uh,
you mentioned we kind of, I was sort of yanking your chain talking about who you've mentored that really didn't deserve it. Have you ever been strategic about mentoring others? Meaning, is this my role? You're a grown up now. You're a senior magician. You've proven yourself. Do you feel like that's part of your gig now, or what's your take on that?
um, a little bit, yeah. In the last few years, I've kind of fallen into that role. I've had the great fortune of performing a lot in the last 16 years or so, or that I've been pursuing magic full time, and definitely between working in a restaurant or multiple restaurants every week. I performed at a theater for 12 years, every week at a theater for 12 years, plus other bookings. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I probably worked more than a whole lot more than a lot of people, and so a lot of people have reached out to me to ask for my input, my guidance, my thoughts, and I have kind of fallen into that role a little bit more. And it's initially I wasn't too sure if I had anything worth sharing, but I guess more and more people were asking me, and so I felt a lot more confident about sharing my opinions and my experience and my guidance. And um, yeah, now I actually I kind of look forward to doing it
Yeah,
with some other people, and because I see potential there. There's a couple guys in town that are fairly new to performing, and I see a lot of potential, and I want to help them. I want to guide them because I always look for magic, and I want magic to be great. I want If the public is seeing a magician, I want them to be
sure.
amazed, and I want it to be great. So
That makes me like you, that hesitancy, because I think we all struggle with that. At some point, you're the new young buck, right? And then
yeah,
you grow up, and then you're not that person anymore. And owning the fact that, like, no, at least in the eyes of younger people, I'm a grown up. They think I'm
yeah,
really good at this, and I better own that and
yeah,
help them. That's an interesting transition, I think, for people, and
yeah. It
hearing you're
definitely
struggling
is.
with that. Which the opposite is you're a jerk, right? You're like, well, I know everything. Sit at my feet, and I will teach you. Those are ugly
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Just bask in my presence.
But
Um,
also owning
but
up and going like, no, I'm actually really good at this. I've done it a lot. I have some opinions. Good for you.
yeah, well, I honestly, I've struggled with it because I've never been one to kind of toot my own horn, and I've always felt like there's room for improvement in everything that I do, and everything I do could always be better. And so when somebody asks for my help and my guidance, I've struggled with that a little bit. I'm trying to embrace it a little bit more, but
Hmm. Do you think performers like us, people who earn their living standing in front of other people, are more insecure and manic than non-performers?
I think probably the majority of them are. I mean, I think there's some that are perfectly suited for this, but I think generally, yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's true for speakers and comedians and magicians where we come off stage and there's every indication that the audience really dug it. Standing
Yeah,
ovation. And yet we're like,
yeah,
was it good? Well, there's a standing
yeah,
ovation. But I don't I just need to be told.
yeah. I think in a to a certain degree, I think that's the sign of a true artist is somebody that is always questioning whether or not they were okay and that they did it right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but that's balanced by the fact that confidence makes you better on stage. Right? You and I can smell out a new entertainer that doesn't know what they're doing yet, and that's an issue if they're not confident enough.
sure, sure, yeah,
It's a weird balance, I think. I don't have the answer, by the way. If you get the answer, I
yeah.
would like to know.
All right, I'll think about it. I'll let you know.
Well, and for the record, you've been really helpful for me not everyone listening knows this, but I grew up doing magic and did it for a living for 12 or 15 years. And now I'm a speaker. But I've always loved magic, and I've been coming back to it. And Shawn, you've been really helpful to me when I say, like, I don't understand this thing. Oh, Brad, look, read this book. But I don't understand that thing. Oh, Brad, let me show you. Thank you. I appreciate you. You've been really helpful to me.
Well, I've enjoyed doing that. I've enjoyed helping, and because truthfully, when I first got started in magic, I remember sitting down and going, "Hey, Brad, help me with learning how to do this and how to perform that." So we didn't do it a whole lot, but I do remember a couple of occasions, definitely you helping me. So,
and I wasn't a jerk.
And no, not at all.
You never know with these stories. All right, we are at that place that I love to end every podcast. Thank you for joining us. Before I ask you this question, where do we learn more about you? ShawnPreston.com? What is it?
ShawnPrestonMagic.com. Yep, that's probably the best place.
Preston.
I'm on the. What's that?
Shawn Preston, SHAWN.
That's correct.
PRESTON. ShawnPrestonMagic.com. What were you going to say?
Yeah. I am on the social medias, but I don't really pay much attention to what I'm not very good about posting on there, and I have lots of friends that tell me I should be better. So I would tell you to go check out my social media, but that probably wouldn't be great. You can look me up on Instagram, and you can look me up on Facebook, but yeah.
All right, I'm going there. Yeah. It's funny. I think for people in our business and so many businesses, social media is just like a guilt trip where we feel like we're supposed to do something.
Yeah.
But the number of people who have successfully turned their foray into Instagram and Snapchat into money is very small.
Yeah.
And I think I'd rather go.
Well, and I'm not going to lie. It's an age thing too. I mean, I'm admittedly a bit at that age where I just don't care to do it. So,
For a while, I was posting a ton on Instagram, which is code for my daughter was posting a ton on Instagram. And
right.
I'll tell you what I was putting up. They were just horrible posts, Shawn. It would be a picture of me on stage, like an action shot. And it would have some quote like, "Live your life to the fullest, Brad Montgomery." Or something's really stupid like that. And it was just horrifying to look at them. My daughter helped me. And I put them up there, and I got a few DMs through Instagram, right? So a message through Instagram.
Yeah.
It would just send me in a tizzy because I'm like, are you serious? I have to monitor this and my phone and my text and Facebook and email and look, Google me.
Exactly.
That was a bad attitude.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to go. I don't recommend that.
Yeah. I mean, all those marketing people tell you, yeah, you got to be on social media these days to be competitive and blah, blah, blah. And I just feel like, I've done pretty okay so far. I'll get to it.
That's kind of how I feel. I feel like if you can't find me through Google, I can give up that job.
Right.
All right. So here we have Colorado rock star magician, sleight of hand expert. I would even say thought leader in the magic world, Shawn. And heck of a nice guy. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope? I would say there's a couple things. When I perform and I see people react with just pure wonder and pure astonishment, that gives me hope that this world is not falling down into this digital social media world, that there's still people out there that can appreciate live performance art of some sort. So I think that gives me hope, but to get even deeper than that, I think it's a really tough question, but honestly, I think that the thing that gives me hope is when I see kids that are passionate about something, passionate about playing a sport, passionate about their schoolwork, passionate about just something, anything. When I see that passion in kids, that kind of reminds me of my youth, and it just gives me hope that our future is going to be in good hands. And when I see kids that are pursuing multiple things and pursuing good grades and pursuing excellence in college and in sports and in art and are still managed to be respectful and kind and compassionate, that really truly gives me hope more than anything, because I want our world to be in a great place, and I want my son to live in a great world. So, yeah.
I heard you. I'm just thinking. Good answer. Yeah, I think that kids with passion. What's kind of struggling to come out, what I'm having trouble articulating is, I feel the same way, Shawn. When I see kids with like that single-minded passion, I just like, oh, wow. But I wonder if that's a function of the fact that you have been that single-minded person. You've been that kid who was super focused. And you were, because there are other very successful people who don't have that. They're more of a renaissance. I love everything. I have general passion.
Yeah.
But I think you and I are the same. That was our childhood.
Yeah, and I just feel like those kids that are passionate about something and that they pursue that with just fervor and with everything they have, they're the game changers. They're the ones that are going to, they're going to grow up and be a full-time magician when everybody told them they shouldn't. They're going to grow up and be some unconventional job and make great strides in changing our world.
Right.
And it makes me anxious to see it and know more about what they're going to do. And I wish I could see the future so I could see that.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, you can do me a favor. Share this bad boy, would you? You know how social media works. I could use your help. By the way, I love your emails. Thank you for I didn't know that would happen when I started a podcast, that people would send me notes. But comments are helpful too, because that's the way social media works. So keep your emails coming, but go to Apple, do it all. I appreciate your help getting me this, help with me to get the word out. Shawn Preston, master magician, freaking nice guy, hopeful dad. Oh man, the people listening to this just did a magic trick. People come to the site, look at YouTube.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that one.
Thanks, Shawn. Stay with me. Everybody, keep washing your hands. We've got a while to go on this thing yet. Get your shot. See you next time, everybody.
That's right.